The email arrives at 4 p.m. on a Friday. It is the calendar invite for your annual review. Instantly, the body responds before the brain does. The tightening of the chest, the slight shallowness of breath. We have been conditioned to view this meeting not as a calibration of value, but as a battle for survival. We armor up. We prepare defenses. But if we look at the landscape of modern employment, particularly through the lens of the gendered pay gap that persists even in 2026, viewing negotiation as combat is a strategic error. Combat implies a winner and a loser. It implies a zero-sum game. Navigation, however, implies a destination. It implies that we are moving through terrain that has weather, topography, and friction. Today, we are not fighting. We are recalibrating the map. Let us look at the structural friction. Despite advances in pay transparency legislation, the gap has shifted from entry-level discrepancies to a widening chasm at the mid to senior executive levels. This is where the ask becomes complex. It is no longer about market rate for a skill. It is about the valuation of impact. The friction here is that while corporations have become adept at using data to suppress wage growth, citing efficiency or AI augmentation, individuals often rely on fairness as their primary metric. Fairness is subjective. Leverage is objective. To navigate this, we have to move away from the emotional labor of asking for permission and toward the architectural labor of designing a compensation package that aligns with the institution's survival. We are moving from "I need a raise" to "here is the cost of my continued capital investment in this firm." Before we begin mapping these vectors, a brief note on where we stand collectively. PathFindHer is not just a broadcast. It is a collective of strategic pathfinders operating in industries that were not designed for us. If you are listening to this while commuting, or perhaps in the quiet moments before the house wakes up, know that you are part of a network analyzing these same systems. We are building a glossary of navigation. If you feel isolated in your strategy, consider joining our collective. We don't exchange business cards. We exchange maps. The first navigational error most of us make is anchoring ourselves in a position. A position sounds like this: I want a 20% increase. The organization's position sounds like, we're in a hiring freeze. The budget is flat. When two positions collide, the result is deadlock. The structural friction here is that positions are binary. They are yes or no. They are open or closed. When we enter a negotiation room leading with a position, we are essentially asking the person across the table to capitulate. Human psychology, and particularly corporate bureaucracy, is designed to resist capitulation. It triggers a defense mechanism. The manager is no longer thinking about your value. They are thinking about their constraint. They are defending their budget line. We have walked into a wall instead of finding a door. To bypass the wall, we look to the principle of interest-based bargaining. This is not new theory, but it is rarely applied with discipline in personal compensation discussions. The compass setting here shifts from "what do I want" to "what is the organization trying to solve?" Every manager, every department head has a headache they are desperate to cure. It might be retention risk. It might be an upcoming product launch with zero margin for error. Or it might be their own optics before the board. When we align our compensation request with the alleviation of their pain, we stop being an expense line item and start being a solvency mechanism. The logic dictates that money flows towards solutions, not needs. If we frame our raise as a need, we are a liability. If we frame it as the cost of securing a high-value asset that solves a specific problem, we are an investment. Let's visualize this in practice. Consider a director of operations. She knows the market rate for her role has jumped, but the company has announced a freeze. A positional approach would be to demand the market rate, receive a no based on policy, and leave the room deflated. Instead, she maps the interests. She knows her VP is terrified of the upcoming supply chain migration. In the room, she does not start with the number. She starts with the migration. She outlines the risk profile, the mitigation strategy she has already designed, and the hours required to execute it flawlessly. She effectively rewrites her job description in real time. Then she pivots. Given that this migration is critical to the Q4 survival strategy and my role has evolved from maintenance to architectural overhaul, we need to recalibrate the compensation to reflect this new scope. She isn't asking for a raise in a freeze. She is negotiating the price of a new critical project. The landmark here is the shift from pay me more for what I did to resource me for what I am about to save you. So, how do we walk this path? It begins weeks before the money conversation. We must engage in diagnostic inquiry. We stop assuming we know what the leadership values, and we start asking. The navigational phrasing sounds like this. As we look at the strategic roadmap for the next 12 months, where do you see the highest risk of failure? Or, what is the one metric that, if we miss it, renders everything else irrelevant? Gather this data. This is your leverage. When you eventually sit down to discuss compensation, you are not bringing a list of your past achievements, which are sunk costs to the company. You are bringing a proposal for future risk mitigation, anchored to the very anxieties they just confessed to you. You are selling them the cure, and the price of the cure is your new salary. Now a brief pause to adjust our lens. We are talking about money, yes, but we are also talking about leadership visibility. There is a red thread connecting these pillars. Often, the reason we are underpaid is not a lack of funds, but a lack of perceived strategic necessity. If you are doing excellent work quietly, you are a utility. Utilities are paid fixed rates. If you are doing excellent work visibly, solving problems that leadership loses sleep over, you are a partner. Partners share in the value they create. Negotiating for money is, at its core, a negotiation for how you are perceived in the hierarchy. If we solve the money problem without solving the visibility problem, we will be back at this same crossroads in 18 months. Let us move to the mechanism of the number itself. The terrain here is often swampy with emotion. We tend to anchor our expectations on our personal financial needs, inflation, rent, childcare, or on a percentage increase from our current salary. I'd be happy with 10%, we say to ourselves. This is a navigational hazard. The market does not care about our mortgage, and more dangerously, anchoring on our current salary reinforces the historical undervaluation we are trying to escape. If you are underpaid by 20% and you ask for a 10% raise, you have simply negotiated a smaller discount on your own labor. We must step out of the terrain of personal need and history and step onto the hard ground of market data. Cognitive psychology offers us the compass of anchor points. The first number thrown onto the table acts as a gravitational center for the rest of the negotiation. If the employer throws out the first number, usually a standard 3% cost of living adjustment, the entire conversation orbits that small figure. We have to fight gravity just to get to 5%. However, if we set the anchor, and we set it high based on external data, the gravity shifts. Even if they negotiate us down, they are negotiating down from our number, not up from theirs. The data required here is not anecdotal. It is specific, sourced, and triangular. We need salary aggregate data, competitor job postings, and, if possible, internal transparency data. We are looking for the replacement cost. What would it cost them in recruitment fees, onboarding time, and premium salary to replace you with someone of equal competence tomorrow? Consider this specific landmark: securing a 20% increase during a corporate hiring freeze. This seems impossible if we look at it through the lens of policy. But let's look at the map. A senior product manager is told there is zero budget for raises. She has done her research. She knows her market value is 20% higher than her current comp. She also knows the company is spending heavily on external consultants to patch gaps in a parallel department. She does not ask for a raise. She prepares a value realignment proposal. She presents the data. The market rate for a lead product manager operating at this output is X. Currently, there is a discrepancy of 20%. I understand the freeze on new headcount. However, retaining a fully ramped lead is significantly more cost-effective than the risk of vacancy. She then anchors high. To realign with the market, the figure is $160K. The manager balks, but the anchor is set. They cannot go back to 3%. They eventually settle on 18%, pulling funds not from the salary pool, but from the retention budget, which is often a separate pot of money entirely. She navigated around the freeze by leveraging the cost of her absence. The path forward requires us to become data architects. Do not walk into the room with a range. Ranges are slippery. The employer will always hear the bottom number, and you will always mean the top. Walk in with a specific, precise number. Based on the scope of the role and current market conditions for this level of strategic output, the value is $142,500. Oddly specific numbers feel more calculated, more researched, and harder to dismiss than round numbers. Practice saying this number out loud. Navigate the discomfort of silence that follows. The silence is not a void. It is the sound of them recalibrating their expectations to your reality. Do not fill that silence with justifications or apologies. Let the anchor sink. Let's shift the lens again, this time toward the pillar of motherhood and caregiving. Often, when we discuss negotiation, we're told to separate our personal lives from the professional. But for many of us, the double burden, the work of the career and the work of the home, is the very reason we need to negotiate harder. The structural friction is that time is our scarcest resource. Sometimes the currency we need to negotiate isn't just dollars, but autonomy. If the corporation cannot meet the anchor point on salary, can they meet it on flexibility? And here is the crucial reframe. Flexibility is not a favor they grant you. It is an efficiency model you offer them. The terrain regarding flexible work, 4-day weeks, asynchronous hours, remote sovereignty, is treacherous. Despite the lessons of the early 2020s, the return to office mandates have reinvigorated the proximity bias. The stigma suggests that if you are asking for control over your time, you are less committed to the mission. You are quiet quitting. This is the terrain of guilt. We feel we are asking for a concession. But if we look at the data, high performers with autonomy consistently outperform those who are merely present. The friction is that we are trying to negotiate a 21st century workflow with managers holding a 20th century map. We have to update their operating system before we can install our request. Our compass here is trade-off logic. In any negotiation, if one variable is fixed, like a frozen salary budget, another variable must become fluid. If they cannot pay you more, they must pay you in time, equity, or title. This is not settling. This is diversifying your portfolio. If you negotiate a 4-day work week at 100% salary, you have effectively achieved a 20% hourly raise. You have bought back your time, the only non-renewable asset you own. The logic is to commoditize the non-monetary. We must assign a value to it. If the budget constraint prevents the salary adjustment, we can bridge the gap through a restructured operating cadence that allows for asynchronous deep work. Imagine a senior analyst, a mother of 2. The company denies her raise request. She does not accept the no as the end of the conversation. She opens the second folder on her map. She proposes a results-only agreement. She suggests that instead of being online from 9 to 5, her deliverables will be met by Friday at noon, with core overlap hours only for critical syncs. She frames this not as, "I need to pick up my kids," but as, "This structure allows me to work during my peak cognitive hours, ensuring the data analysis is flawless." She secures a Tuesday-Thursday remote schedule and a no-meeting Friday. 6 months later, she uses the no-meeting Friday to consult on the side, effectively creating the raise the company refused to give her. She navigated the blockage by widening the road. To execute this, use the if-then protocol. If the salary is fixed at X, then we need to adjust the variable of Y, time, location, scope, to balance the equation. Never leave a negotiation with a no and nothing else. That is a dead end. Always have a pivot. Furthermore, if you do agree to a lower number or a compromise, you must negotiate a trigger date. I understand the constraints today. Let us agree to revisit this in 6 months, and if I have delivered X, Y, and Z, the salary will automatically adjust to this pre-agreed figure. Get it in writing. You are effectively placing a time lock on your value. You are creating a future checkpoint on the map, so you don't get lost in the day-to-day drift. We approach the final and perhaps most difficult terrain, the exit. The fear of walking away is the primary reason we accept subpar offers. We are risk-averse. We prefer the devil we know to the uncertainty of the job market. The organization knows this. They bank on your inertia. They calculate that the friction of you leaving is higher than the friction of you staying dissatisfied. This imbalance of power is the invisible wall in every negotiation room. As long as they know you need them more than they need you, the map is drawn in their favor. The compass reading here is BATNA, Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. This is the single most powerful source of leverage you possess. Your BATNA is your Plan B. It is the offer letter from a competitor tucked in your bag. It is the consulting LLC you have set up and are ready to launch. It is the 6 months of savings that allows you to say no and mean it. When you have a strong BATNA, your energy changes. You stop pleading and start partnering. The scent of desperation disappears, replaced by the scent of options. You are not threatening them, you are simply aware of your market liquidity. The compass points to the fact that you are a volunteer, not a conscript. There is a distinct shift in tone when a negotiator knows they can leave. I recall a creative director who was consistently passed over for equity. She spent 3 months quietly interviewing. She secured an offer that included significant stock options. When she went into her review, she didn't slam the offer on the table. She simply said, "I am committed to this team, but the market has signaled that my equity position here is misaligned with my value. I would prefer to correct that here than elsewhere." She didn't bluff, she stated a fact. The organization, sensing the reality of her potential exit, found the equity. And if they hadn't, she would have walked. The landmark is not the threat, it is the autonomy. It is the knowledge that you are the captain of the ship, not part of the cargo. The path requires you to define your walkaway point before you enter the room. Write it down. If the offer is below X, or if the flexibility is denied, I will activate my exit plan. This prevents the slow erosion of your boundaries in the heat of the moment. It protects you from rationalizing a bad deal. Navigating your career requires the courage to sail into open water if the harbor becomes hostile. Start building your BATNA today. Update the LinkedIn profile. Take the coffee chat. Hoard the runway fund. Leverage is not something you demand. It is something you accumulate. Negotiation is not a singular event. It is a continuous loop of navigation. We survey the terrain, we check the compass of data, we identify the landmarks of opportunity, and we choose our path. It is uncomfortable. It requires us to override the social conditioning that tells us to be grateful just to be in the room. But remember, the map is not the territory. The company's policy is not the law of physics. It is a construct, and constructs can be renegotiated. You are the architect of your own value. Do not let them appraise you based on their budget. Force them to appraise you based on your impact. As we close this chart, I want to ask for your peer navigation. Which part of this map feels most like your current reality? Are you stuck in the positional trap? Are you needing to construct an anchor point? Or are you quietly building your BATNA? Share your coordinates in the comments or the community thread. Let's validate the terrain for one another. Because when one of us recalibrates the map, the path becomes clearer for all of us. Until next time, keep finding your path.